Can you tell that
Yes.
we are live now? Okay, good.
Yes.
Well, welcome, 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 everyone. I want to welcome Joanne to our member interview. But before we get started, let me just give you a little bit of background why we're doing this. I'm a Back in the Groove Again coach, and I've created this great community for women. And not everyone, not every woman is a businesswoman. It's not the purpose of the group. The purpose of the group is to support one another, to encourage one another, to help us get back in our grooves. And women do that in different ways. And the reason I started the interviews is because some women do have special skills. They want to showcase certain things in particular. Maybe they have businesses they want to talk about. And I know with Joanne, it's something that's really fun. And I'm not going to say what it is, but I'm going to let you tell us. So, Joanne, why don't we start with first finding out a bit more about who you are? Tell us a little bit more about who you are, Joanne.
Well, I'm Joanne Cooper. I'm a retired teacher, and we live in Colorado. And during COVID stay at home, I had an idea to write a children's book. I've always wanted to be the next Nora Roberts, but I don't have a novel in me. But I do have lots of rhymes. And I decided to ask my grandson, who's 11 years old, if he would like to be my illustrator. And he said that would be an opportunity of a lifetime, and which was very sweet. So the Adventures of Conan and King was born during COVID stay at home to preserve my
All right.
sanity and to get me back into my creative groove.
That's right. So we're gonna get into the book in just a little bit more, but I didn't know you were a teacher. So tell us more about that. I have a background in teaching. I'm also a, qualified teacher and so on. So I know about teaching, but I wanted to know more about who did you teach? How did you teach? How creative were you when you were teaching?
Well, I considered myself a creative teacher because I have always written poems and I've always written rhymes. And I
Oh,
would write rhymes pertaining to educational subjects. And I would have my students, I taught grades for well, from first grade up to eighth grade. So I have a wide variety of experience. Reading is really my forte, and I was the last 3 years of my teaching career, I was a reading intervention teacher for sixth, seventh, and eighth. But anyway, my passion in the classroom was to make it exciting and interesting, and I thought rhymes about division or
right.
verbs was interesting, and the kids enjoyed it, and they could get up and move around, so it was fun
That's right.
and
Yeah,
educational.
absolutely. I remember I went to teachers college in 94. And I did go into the primary junior stream, although I didn't really like it afterwards. But anyways, that's a whole different story. But I remember at the time we were talking we were talking about integrating subject matters, right? And I
Yes.
see that's what you're doing. You're integrating. Well, tell us about how you integrate it because that's wonderful. I love it. Love it.
And you mean my classroom? Is that what you're
Yeah,
talking
how
about
did
in my
you
classroom?
integrate?
How I
Yeah.
integrate? Well, for example, it's funny, I can still remember a rhyme to teach division. And I just wrote divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. Learn these steps so you won't frown. And we did all kinds of hand movements with it. And I actually had students who would come back to me after years of having me and saying how that helped them. And that was rewarding to me. They could always remember
Absolutely.
that rhyme and remember how to divide after that. So those
Yeah.
little things meant a lot to me, and it was very rewarding for me to do that. So
Yes, it is. And I'm sure that the students will remember you for the wonderful rhymes that you've created and so on, right?
yes,
I
I used to
remember,
do plays too.
yeah. one of the techniques that I learned, I also did my master's in education, was about, when to learn names, we were told, well, if you could rhyme your name with something else, or if you can associate your name with something, all these creative ways that people remember things. I'm sure your
Mhm.
students remember. Now, we're going to go towards your interest in writing. Have you ever written anything before other than poems?
Plays. I used to write plays. I taught Colorado history, and I'd write a play about all the characters in Colorado history, and have the students perform the play. So I've done a lot of that, but I've never attempted to write a book of any kind. So this was my first attempt at doing that, and it was an enjoyable and fun ride with my grandson, of course, 11
Yes.
years old, as my illustrator. So uh,
I saw the
that was
picture of your
creating memories.
grandson. Yeah. So what made you decide? I know COVID had a lot to do with it, but let's put that aside for one moment. What made you decide I'm going to write a book and I'm going to get my grandson to help out? How did you make that decision to take the leap?
Well, yeah, my inspiration was right out my window here in my backyard, my two frisky, lovable labs. And I'd watch them during the day, and we play with them all the time. And I thought, well, that would be a cute story for a child. Uh,
Yeah.
and I just really incorporated things that I witnessed them doing outside, because much of my first book is based on their real life escapades here. My second book, my second book is a true flight into fancy from my imagination. But the first book, so they were really the inspiration for me. And
Wow.
I thought, well, I can do this. I can try to do this, and it flowed. They are responsible for getting me back into my creative groove, I think, because based on
Well,
their
yeah.
escapades and their friskiness. So that's how it all began for me.
I think that's cute because, dogs can't talk to you, but they can certainly show you how they feel.
Absolutely. But they talk in my second book.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. They do talk in my second book, and they dress up in costumes and things. Yes. That I just it just took off from there, from book one. It just took off. And
So,
but
so I have to
it's
ask it.
been
I have to ask, in terms of the second book, and we'll get into the stories in just a few minutes. I don't have questions pre-planned, to be honest with you, Joanne. I'm just kind of going
okay.
going with my intuition.
That's fine.
Um,
That's the best kind of
but
interview. Spontaneous.
I'm curious, how in books with humans, usually the human has a certain age and a certain personality, and I'm wondering if your pets, the characters in your books, if they have a certain age or a certain personality.
Well, one is the pup. One is King is only 1 year old in reality, so
Oh, okay.
he's the pup in the story. The other
Okay.
one, Kona, is 3 years old, so she's more of a teacher. So the pup kind of follows her. But
Um,
but basically, but they can be any age, I suppose. You can just use your imagination
yeah,
for them.
but
So,
that's interesting because they are based on real life characters, real
yes,
life. I was going to say
yep,
people,
they
but
are.
well, people in a sense are pets.
Well, they're my canine kids. That's what I call them, my canine kids. So in a sense,
Sure,
that's what they are. They're part of the family.
that's right. So then tell us about, I'm curious about the first book and the process that you took to write it out, because writing a book isn't always easy. So what process did you take to write the book?
No, it had took numerous edits to do it. I would write it out in longhand. I had a notebook, and I would write it out in longhand. And then when I got it to the point where I thought it was perfected as much as I possibly could, I brought my grandson in, and we looked at the rhymes and the verses, and then he drew his vision from the rhymes. So that's the process that we used to do that. And it was, like I said, it was numerous edits and rewrites. I put it aside for a couple of weeks and I'd come back to it, which I did my research and said that writers should do that. Put it aside and then you get a fresh perspective when you come back to it. So that's the way we did it. That's the way we did it. And then we have a graphic designer that we send it to when it's complete on our end, because she polishes up. Her name is Amy Huber in Los Angeles, and she polishes the book up for us because we can't do that. I don't have the capability of doing that. So she polishes it up for us and puts it into the format that Amazon, it's published by Amazon, that Amazon will accept. Yeah, that's how we did it.
Wow.
So it was a fascinating process.
Yes. Is it as the same process for the second book? Was it the same process for the second book?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Right now, it's all been sent to our graphic designer, and she adds background to my grandson's illustrations. He does the main illustration, but she is like a co-illustrator, and then she designs around my words, my verses too. She'll put some pictures from the book around the verses, so to make it a little more visually appealing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've downloaded not your book, but I've downloaded children's books in the last few months actually, and it's amazing the illustrations in those books. Just amazing. And I don't know where your grandson gets his ideas, but I'm curious. How does he get his ideas? Other than what he's reading on your script. How is he, being able to do that?
He just tells me it's his vision. He says, "This is my vision for what you've written." And I let his creativity flow from there. Now he's only 11 years old, so are the illustrations, perfect? And they're drawn by an 11-year-old who has artistic ability, but still, he's a child, he's a kid. So, but that I think is part of the appeal of the book, because I have an introduction to it, and I say that it's written by a grandmother and illustrated by her 11-year-old grandson. So I think there's kind of an inspiration maybe to other people who are my age who might want to, embark upon writing or any kind of a career, and children, to see, well, look, an 11-year-old did this, and we published a book. Why can't I do it? So that's part of my inspiration too for creating this and having and bringing my grandson on board. Plus, I can't draw. I don't draw.
Okay.
No, I can write rhymes. That's my talent, but I don't draw. So I needed an artist. So, and I know, of course, that he
does. So who is your target market? Who's your target audience?
Well,
is it kids? Is it parents? Is it grandparents?
Yeah, it's basically ages 2 to 9 is my target audience, and grandmas too is how I promote it. I've had lots of wonderful feedback from grandparents and parents who read to their child, or they have an older grandchild who reads to the younger ones. So, and they send me pictures, and I tell them, I'll write a special rhyme for you if you send me a picture. And I do. I post it on Facebook with a special rhyme written just for them, and with their permission, of course. I never do it without, but with their permission, that's what I do. And they love it. They love to see themselves on Facebook with a special rhyme created for them. And so they sit there and they're reading the book, and somebody takes a picture, and then they send it to me. So that's been awfully fun and creative for me too, to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a wonderful idea. And I suppose now that you're an author, you have to, and I'm
still getting used to that.
Well, you are an author. Yeah. You're a published author, right?
I know. It's still is a little unreal to me
Yes.
that I am.
And now that you're a published author, I'm just thinking how some, and I don't know about the writing world, but I'm thinking of how you market, right? Because and how you're doing it now. The techniques that you're using now are out of the box way of thinking. The writing poems for
Yep.
children while they're reading the
Right.
books, or and taking
Mhm.
pictures. What a great way of connecting with your audience.
I'm trying to do it that way. So Facebook has been, my social media outlet here for promoting and marketing the book.
Hmm. Hmm.
I tried
Absolutely.
Instagram too, but I'm not really an Instagram user. So, but I'm more Facebook, and I enjoy doing that and connecting with other people, and like as yourself, and connecting with other groups of people of wonderful, lots of women entrepreneur groups that I've connected
That's
with,
right.
and for nice support and encouragement, and it's been wonderful. It's really been
Good,
wonderful.
good, good. So as you're moving forward, you're in the process of publishing your second book. What are
Mhm.
some of your dreams, aspirations, goals for
Well,
for the
I
next
never.
adventures or books?
um, it's really all about creating wonderful memories with my grandson, to tell you the truth. It's never been
Mm,
about financial gain for me.
right.
I've always wanted to be an author. And now I can say I am, even though it's
Yeah.
still that hat. I don't know, it doesn't sit on me really okay. It's not that it's not okay. It's just, it's almost surreal. Um, but that's really why I do it. And I do it to educate children because my books are interactive. I ask lots of questions
Oh,
to stimulate children's imaginations and initiate conversations with them and with their parents and with their grandparents. And that's the feedback I've had from grandparents and parents, has said that that's a nice feature of the book, that it's interactive. So after I write a verse, there are questions underneath each picture to stimulate this conversation and to
right,
just make them think about different things. And
right.
it's a nice feature, I think, of the book. I really
Yes.
like
Can
doing
you give
that
us an
part.
example? Can you
Yes,
give us an
for
example? Show
example,
us.
yeah, for example, I write a verse about a mama quail. And this actually happened. A mama quail laid eggs in our strawberry patch in our garden one summer. And the babies hatched and they were running around the corn. Um, However, my dogs were always on guard. And here's the picture that my grandson drew. And 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 I was worried about how are they going to escape from the yard, because the Conan and the king are always on guard. But the labs came in for the night, and somehow in the morning, those darling baby quails slipped out of sight. For in the
Mm,
morning, not a single baby was left behind. What escape route did they find? So that's the
oh,
question that I ask at the end of that
oh,
verse. So that initiates conversation with whomever is reading the book to them, and to talk about, well,
that's
how do you think they found a way out of the yard? And that's absolutely true. This was a true
yeah.
story. I was concerned about those little baby quail and that mama quail laying eggs in our strawberry patch. I couldn't get over over that. They were the
Yeah.
cutest little thing, but in the
I
morning
can
they were all
imagine.
gone. So yeah, so I
And
do that with my
real eggs
second
are
book too.
right. I think that's a great idea. It does stimulate creativity. Now,
Mhm.
if a child is reading this book on their own, how do you encourage them uh, to to reflect on these questions? How can they? How could they, if they're reading it on
Well,
their own?
yeah, I'd be hoping that an adult would be with them, just
Hmm.
because I think it's a unique experience to discuss. the book. And my books are vocabulary rich. I do not write baby books with baby language. I have words like luscious and delectable,
Wow.
and acquainting, and I have vocabulary, mystified, things like that. So I would hope that they
Yeah.
would, a parent or grandparent would link up with them, because they'll need to some explanation about, well, what do you think the word means? And then from there, they
Yes.
can discuss what the word means and how does it apply uh, to my verse. So that's
That's
another
true.
educational tool that I use as well. And that's I probably drew on my educational background for that, for the interactive questions and for the rich vocabulary in my
Yes,
books.
I'm sure. How else, and let's tap into that. How else do you think these books reflect some of your background, some of your teaching background, some of your experiences with, even
Well,
writing
I
poems
think
and so on?
right. I think because I saw from firsthand experience how my children in my classroom enjoyed and learned from the rhymes that I would create,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
they enjoyed a lot of movement. Those rhymes, I incorporated a lot of movement in the classroom, but they also enjoyed the vocabulary and learning new things, learning new vocabulary, and uh,
Hmm.
I would have them write as well. So I hoped that by seeing me set an example of how to write rhymes, that they carried that over into some of their poetry writing, which they would do for me.
Yes, yeah.
They would write poems, as I'm kind of being
Hmm.
inspired, uh, perhaps to do that.
Yes. How are children different now than were? I'm not necessarily when you first started teaching, but in your teaching years, I know you've retired, I'm not
Mhm.
sure how, when, but how are children different now?
Too much technology, I think, and not enough emphasis
Hmm.
on reading books, having a book in their hand.
Hmm.
You know, my book is also published with a Kindle version, and that's great, but just anything to
Hmm.
get them reading again. Get them reading, get
Yes.
them away from their their technology, their Game Boys, their all that, the games that the videos and all that, just to
Yeah.
get them back into the wonderful world of reading and books.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's another goal of mine with children, is to get them to develop, have a child's library, and have entertaining books and
Yeah.
stimulating books for them.
Yeah.
So I would hope that parents and grandparents would see the value in that.
Yeah. Well, I think parents and grandparents do see the value of that. It's children, I think, honestly. And I'm just thinking of my grandchildren. I have two granddaughters, and they are on their computers or
Uh-huh. Yes.
or a telephone like all the time, and it just drives me crazy. But that's a whole different conference. That's a whole other conversation.
No, I agree. I agree. My grandson is too. I have to pull him away from his phone and all that.
Right. So let's be realistic. Parents and grandparents, they're convinced reading is important. How can we, and how can you, or how can this movement that you're trying to create in this a great movement in this sense, how can we get kids back into reading? What do we need to do to get them back
I
into
think
reading and enjoying it?
I think we need to find their interests, where their interests lie,
Hmm.
outside of Game Boy and outside of the phone, but where do their interests lie? What do they like to read? And I
Hmm.
think we need to offer them more materials uh, in their groove, to get them interested and inspired to read some more. I think if parents and grandparents try to do that, I know my grandson likes books written by the former Doogie Howser. He wrote a series of
Oh,
magic books, and they're wonderful. And it inspired him to just read and read and read. And he kept saying, Grandma, can we get me this next book in the series and the next book in the series? So I think if you really try hard to find something which interests a child, I think they will read. And it might take some time. Another good technique is to have a reading time at night with a parent reading a page, then the child
Yeah.
reads the next page, and then so forth and
Yes.
so on. I did that when my grandchildren would stay overnight with me. We would do that. We'd have a reading time, and we would do each of us would do a page, and it just it makes it more interesting, I think, and exciting for the child when you're a part of their reading time.
Yes.
So that's one
One
thing I
thing,
would encourage parents to do.
yes, one thing that is springing to mind, and I'll give you a little bit of background. I'm a coach, but I also teach English as a foreign language. And one of the things that I like to do is read to children. Now, when I teach English, I work with adults. I don't teach, children, but I love reading children's books. And one thing that I thought of doing, and I'm just kind of putting it out there, is uh, helping parents or teaching parents how to read books to children, because I don't
Yes,
think
that's.
parents know how. So I'm asking, what do you think of that? And it's not for me because I'm not
I
going to
think
be
it's
doing that.
I think it's a great idea. I think learning by example, showing children the excitement that reading can create, and using wonderful voices and
Yeah,
expression,
that's it.
being very expressive when you're reading, to make the story pop for them. And I
Yeah.
think that will increase interest in it. And I think, and rhymes are easy to read, they're easy to follow, and there's a rhythm to it. So
Hmm.
that's one way of teaching. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. I'm just putting it out there because I'm really thinking that there are a lot of parents who don't really know how to use their voice, how to use their pitch,
Mhm.
and how to get that excitement going. And, they don't know really
Absolutely.
how to do
Right.
it. They just read the words and, answer.
No, that's not exciting enough. That's you need to put a little enthusiasm in
That's
it.
that's right, especially with children's books, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh,
Yes.
all right. Well,
So
as we
hopefully
near
they
the
will be
end,
able to learn.
yes, absolutely. And I think they need models like you to teach them. I really do. Because
Well,
no,
I
I'm
post some
serious.
videos. Yeah, I
Good.
post some videos, and even my grandson, I videotape him reading excerpts from our book, and he uses very good
Yes.
expression. His expression is wonderful. Of course, I coach him, but he just has a natural talent for that as well. So hopefully, parents can learn from how I read my verses, and how Zach reads the verses as well, and they'll carry it over. And
Oh, very good. So a couple of more things before we end our call. One is, and I have to ask this, how do you get back in your groove? How do you find your groove, Joanne?
uh, I think writing has gotten me back into my groove, my creative
Hmm.
groove.
Hmm.
I left it for a while. After I left teaching, I really didn't write much. Okay, an occasional poem. I write poems for example, some wedding gifts or things like
Yeah.
that, and I'll frame it.
Yes.
And I do
Yes.
things like that. But to really sit down and get back into my creative groove, uh, writing gave me that opportunity.
Good.
So that's
Very
the
good.
way I look at this whole adventure that we're on, to get me back into my creative groove, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. I really am.
That's
It's
wonderful.
it's work. It's work to promote it and market it and all that, but it's fun,
Yeah.
and it gets my
It's part of
creative
it, right?
juices flowing.
Exactly. That's part of that groove.
Yes,
Perfect. And
absolutely.
just one last thing. One last thing,
Mhm.
please post, when we're done our live, the video is going to be on our group. And I'm also thinking what I
Okay.
might want to do is I'm going to download it and put it on my YouTube channel as well, with
Oh,
your permission. Because
absolutely.
I
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So please add,
Yeah,
once we finish this live, please add, your details, how we can get how we can get more information from you, and about the book and all that stuff. And then I'll add that information on the YouTube when I put it up on YouTube as well.
absolutely. Yeah, the book is just called The Adventures of Conan King. It's available on Amazon, so it's really easy to find, or under my name, Joanne Cooper. So it's an interesting, it's a cute little book. It's 29 pages of cuteness. Is the way I look at it.
Yes, yes, and the images are illustrated by your grandson on top of
Mhm.
that.
On top of that, yeah, on top of that, that makes it all worthwhile to have this
Absolutely.
collaboration with him. Is a memory worth holding on to, and
Yeah.
something for us to share, especially during the COVID stay at home when we, um, were pretty much at separate homes, and we get together occasionally, but this really preserved my sanity for sure,
Yes.
and it just helped get us through those times and get
Yeah.
something positive out of a negative situation. So,
Yeah.
and bring a
Absolutely.
little joy,
Absolutely.
spread a little joy and happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was a pleasure meeting with you and talking with
Well,
you and getting to
thank
know a
you.
little bit more about you and your background. So thank
Thank
you
you. It was a
again.
pleasure. It was a pleasure having you interview me, Linda. I appreciate it.
No
Thank
problem.
you
It was
so
real
much.
fun. Thank you, Joanne. Take care, and I'll end the call now.
You too.
Bye.
Okay, very good. Bye bye.